Hi everyone. Well, today I thought I'd talk about horse personalities and our own personalities and how important it is in a relationship with your horses to understand who they are so that we can build a strong bond. Over the years, I've read a lot of discussions on social media about horse problems, and probably one of the things that stands out to me the most is simply personality clashes. People don't take into account that every horse has its own personality, and as you'll see in with Billy and Bella, both of them have very distinct personalities from each other. Bill's an extrovert and Bella's an introvert. This next section about Billy is pretty tongue in cheek, but my point is where it comes to Billy, he has a very overt sort of personality type. He wears all his emotions externally. When he's mad, he's mad. When he's happy. When he's frustrated, you can really tell. Now, as somebody who didn't understand Bill or had never had anything to do with him might be frightened when they see him put his ears back and shake his head up and down and stomp his feet. And for Billy means actually nothing by it. It's just him demonstrating, and he loves to demonstrate, but he's actually a very peaceful and easygoing horse and will do just about anything for you. So you can't always make a decision or a judgment on a horse based on what you see in front of you if you don't understand their personality and if you haven't got to know them. One of the things I've often read is people who purchase horses and then 3 weeks later, they're complaining and saying, I didn't get what I expected. This horse has problems, or this horse is shut down, or this horse is aggressive. There's a lot of things that people say it's a horse's fault, when in reality, number one, they've never allowed the horse the ability to settle before they've started to take it out or on the trails or they wanted to work. Horses, like humans, go through grief and loss. They have their own resilient levels. Bill's resilience is a lot higher than Bella's. Bella shuts down a lot more quickly. She's an introvert. Um, but both of them still would go through a lot of, it's probably emotional suffering if they were pulled away from each other and moved on to another property or to a new owner. It takes time for horses to adjust. You can't just assume that because you saw this easygoing horse or, Mr. Personality at someone else's property, that that horse is immediately going to act the same once you've bought it. For example, when we got Billy, he was so close to death it wasn't funny, and he was extremely shut down. You would have had no idea that the horse you see today, that I'm feeding grapes to at the moment because that's one of his little passions, what used to hide in the corner of the stable, and he just simply didn't want to know the world. He was sick, he was sore, and he was starving, and they were the only things that were on his mind. And he was frightened. He was incredibly frightened because he didn't know where he was. Um, He'd been transitioned from the wild into an adjustment facilities where he starved and was picked on. And then all of a sudden, when he's close to death, he turns up at my place, and he had absolutely no idea what was going to happen to him. So he, was so shut down, you just would not have been able to tell what his personality type was until he started to adjust. And that took time because the first thing that needed to be dealt with where Bill was concerned was his very poor health. But over a period of time, he went from, and also the other thing that had to be taken into account was that he was very young. So he also had a lot of emotional development and growth to do. And as he grew up and got healthier, he was a wild boy for quite some time. And so what you see today is very much the adult horse with his adult personality. But as he grew, different facets of his personality came out that we had to learn to adapt to ourselves, and we had to be able to blend with Bill. It was easier for me, a bit harder for Kel because Bill was more surly with Kel because he had issues from being abused. So it took Kel longer to really make friends with Bill. But again, we had to take Bill's personality into account, and he had to adapt his personality to us. And we had, so both sides, of the relationship needed to make adaptations to fit in with each other. The same goes with Bella. Bella was extremely reactive and introverted at the same time. She's still very introverted, but the reactiveness is gone. And so, again, she had to learn to adapt to us, and we had to learn to adapt to her. None of that happens overnight. So, for example, if you're an extroverted type personality and you purchase an introvert type horse, you're not necessarily going to get along with each other because the horse is always going to be introverted. It's not going to change its personality type, regardless of what your dreams and plans for your horse is. And this is where clashes start to come in because over a period of time, the horse starts to develop more anxieties, problems start to come out. The extroverted owner just wants to get out there and do their thing, and the introverted horse just wants to be left alone or can only cope for so long and then starts to display reactiveness. So this is where you've really got to work out the balance between, that horse that you think is just beautiful and you've got all kinds of ideas for this horse. You have to look at the horse's personality type. An extroverted horse with an extroverted personality is going to work much better than an extroverted personality with an introverted horse. I know that makes common sense to most people, but in reality, the we don't see that. We never see people buy horses for their personality. They buy horses for their type, for their breed, for the discipline that they're trained in. And usually, personality is the last thing that people ever look at. Also, to add to the mix of this is dominant personalities versus passive personalities. So, if you get a horse that is extroverted with a dominant personality, it's just not going to be suitable for somebody, even if they're highly experienced, with someone with an introverted sort of personality who's also soft by nature. Because usually what happens, and I see this and I'm not picking on women because I'm a woman myself, but I see this with a lot of older people and younger ones too. I take that last statement back, where the horse is constantly pushing, the dominant horse with the extroverted personality is constantly pushing and shoving on their owner and telling them what to do. And the hapless owner, is just shoved all over the place, or they're walked over, or trodden on, or nipped at, or just generally disrespected. And again, it's because one is the horse is over the top, personality wise, and in terms of its dominance, and the owner is a passive, sweet natured, docile, introverted sort of personality who's just not used to dealing with out there and loud type horse personalities. And this is where you see so many videos online from professional horse trainers and who also act like psychologists for the horse's client. And, it makes me laugh because quite often I see it's the actual owner that the horse trainer does more work on than the horse. Because when you look at the horse training that they do, it's always the same process. Teach the horse to back out of the person's space, gain back some sort of control and respect. And that's all well and good while the trainer's doing it. But the owner has to be able to do that on a daily basis. And if they can't, that horse will end up getting sold on with those problems that have been exacerbated by the passive owner. And now I'm not talking about submission. I'm talking about learning to work with your horse's personality type and also learning to balance your own personality with a horse's personality and with its dominance or passive sort of personality. So there's a lot involved in horse relationships that I don't think people are really that aware of. Hence, we've seen the rise of a lot of internet personalities and horse trainers who are trying to unravel the web of mess that ends up in horse relationships quite often, that we all sit back and watch and ooh and ah about. Now, I will say at this point that I have psychological training, many years of understanding in horse behaviour, human behaviour, animal behaviour. So I am qualified to talk about this. I don't often talk about my own background in terms of my knowledge base. However, it's such an important issue. And, look, one of the big things that I see online, and I read a lot of social media, is desperate people asking desperate questions to horse trainers who aren't psychologists, but do have a knowledge of horse behaviour, and they want the horse trainer not only to resolve the horse's issues, but their own issues. And that's simply not possible. So think long and hard about why you're buying your horse. And if you're coming up against problems, don't necessarily think that it's the horse's fault. It could be yours, or it could be my fault. You have to look at yourself before you look at your horse, because, theories are great, but in reality, practical life, we're all different daily. We all have different moods daily, different thoughts dailies, and so do horses. Whether you like it or not, they're more than just a herd animal, and they're more than just a commodity. They're a sentient being who have good days, bad days. They have health issues. They age. All kinds of things can be going on, or they just mightn't gel with you, or vice versa. So think about all these different aspects before you purchase a horse. And if you're in a good position to do so, spend some time with the horse before you make that decision to buy it, because you can save yourself and the horse a lot of trouble in the long run. All right, that's my thoughts for the day. If you like our channel, please subscribe, and thanks for listening.